I pumped my heart and soul into PreSales Collective for years. And walking away from that business was one of the hardest things I've ever done professionally. I realized that despite putting all my heart and soul in PreSales Collective, I needed to take a step back and focus on myself and getting myself back to where I needed to be to put my best foot forward. Just because someone has a title or just because someone's been doing this for a long time doesn't mean that they have all the answers.
Hi, I'm Hannah Bloking.
I'm Allison Macklick, and this is another episode of Imposter Talks from 4 Under 3. Hannah, we were just talking about how we have not recorded an episode in a while. How have you been?
I've been really good, and I think I really need this today, though. I don't know. How are you feeling, Allison?
I need this too. I know summer, we had COVID and we had crazy things happen. It's just been a wild summer. But today, so one of the crazy things that happened, I was attacked by a dog with my dogs back in April. And I finally felt brave enough to talk about it today on LinkedIn. And I'm feeling like a vulnerability hangover right now for putting something that real and raw and authentic into the world. And I'm feeling like a little exhausted. So I think recording this today is exactly what I need to start talking about things that I love with people that I love. So this could not have come at a better time.
I agree. I don't think Allison and I mutually love anybody more. So we're really excited. And I actually don't think I've been as excited about an episode and a guest ever, because I think maybe after a year of pursuing him for this topic, we finally have the incredible James Kaikis here today with us today. And a little bit of background about me and James 5 years ago. Can't believe it's been that long. We met through a pre-sales network, and James and I both quickly connected, even though we live nowhere near each other. I'm in Seattle, he is in Chicago, but we both realized we shared a passion for opportunities that pre-sales opened up for a really diverse background of people. And James, being James, took this to level 1000 and established PreSales Collective. And Allison and I have both been passionate supporters of that, and I did some newsletters for it early in the day. And so over the years, James just been this amazing role model for me and Allison. He's been an advisor to us and really just an inspiration. And I could go on, but we're here to listen to James. Now it's time for us to pass it to you, James. Tell us who you are. Tell everybody who you are.
Yeah. Wow. That was such an amazing introduction. I really, really appreciate that. And I'm super thankful to be here today. I applaud the two of you for this journey. So for those who don't know, my name is James Kaikis. Currently, I am the head of go-to-market and chief solutions officer at a company called TestBox in the demo automation space. Prior to this, I co-founded PreSales Collective, where I got to know both of these two amazing women and worked hand in hand with Hannah. She ran our newsletter, created Beyond the Demo. That was her creation. Prior to that, I was at Salesforce as a solutions leader. I was the first SC leader at a company called Showpad and Revenate. And prior to that, I worked in hospitality and operations. And so this whole concept of imposter syndrome has probably been ingrained in my life as I've transitioned to these new jobs and taken on more roles and responsibilities. And I'm just super thankful to be here today to talk to the two of you. I'm sorry it's taken so long. Truth be told, being vulnerable as well, I just wasn't in the best place to talk about myself and my story and where I was. And now I'm thankful for both of your patience and having me on here today.
I mean, plus you've been busy. Geez, your introduction, you can be 100 years old with us.
It's been a busy couple of years, but I like the joke that I'm a glutton for punishment. I really enjoy the busyness and the chaosness and problem solving and figuring tough things out.
Yeah, I remember talking to you. I was driving through the mountains last summer. My mother-in-law lives in Colorado with Hannah, and you were telling us of your next step, but it was top secret. We weren't going to talk about it at all, and we didn't. And then you said, this was last year. So you said, whenever I'm at my next place, I'd love to be on. Now it is August. So let's dive in. So tell us about TestBox. Tell us what that journey has been.
Yeah.
I know you didn't take this decision lightly. You put in a lot of thought and took a lot of time after pre-sales. Talk through us through that, but through the lens of fighting your imposter throughout. We'd love to.
Yeah, I appreciate this question. As you can imagine, I pumped my heart and soul into PreSales Collective for years, and walking away from that business was one of the hardest things I've ever done professionally. A lot of people don't know the whole story. We ended up selling to a parent company that was helping us grow. And it got to a point where I just didn't feel like I could put my best foot forward. And I remember somebody seeing me at an event a couple months before and they said, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" And I was like, I was caught off guard. Like, "What do you mean? I've known you for years. You don't look okay." And someone actually saw me a couple months later. "You're not even there right now. What's going on?" And I realized that despite putting all my heart and soul in PreSales Collective, I needed to take a step back and focus on myself and getting myself back to where I needed to be to put my best foot forward. And so I disappeared for a few months. And what did I want to do next? What did I want to do next? For whatever reason, I grew up in a small town. My parents never went to college, and I'm named after my grandfather, who was this really well accomplished man who grew up with nothing. And so I've always wanted to continue to push myself professionally and sometimes push myself a little too far. And so when I figured out what did I want to do next, I built a company. I built this business from the ground up with amazing people and built this network. And it was like, what was the next step for me? And for me, I wanted to go back into tech and I wanted to actually own all of go-to-market and own the customer journey. And with PreSales Collective, we talk about imposter syndrome here, right? There were so many things that I was putting out there as like ideals or leadership or like the best way of doing things, but I wasn't living that life in tech. And so I wanted to go put my money where my mouth was. And I wanted to be responsible and accountable and push myself and see if I could do this. And all those things I've been pontificating about, it was time to put into action. And so I ended up joining TestBox in December of last year. And here we are in August. And it's been an incredible journey. And I'm super thankful to be here.
It's been so much fun watching your journey. And I know I personally love reading your thought leadership that comes out as you're starting to reestablish go to market strategies and talking about demo automation. We're here to talk about imposter syndrome. You lightly referenced it. So, imposter syndrome just means a lot of things to a lot of people, is what Allison and I have learned over the course of having so many of these conversations. So, could you maybe talk a little bit about what does it mean to you? What do you think of when you think of imposter syndrome?
Yeah. I will give both of you two credits for hosting events at PreSales Collective about imposter syndrome for me to really learn what it was. I think for me, I like to think about the word confidence a lot in my life, of like confidence to make decisions and confidence to be able to take a risk or take a bet. And when I think about imposter syndrome, it's this idea that everyone around you who's in senior titles, who are in a certain role, doing a certain job, that they're better than you because they have that title. They have that position. They're at that certain company that has that prestige. And sometimes it can be really intimidating, right? It can be really intimidating. But at the end of the day, we're all people, right? So to me, it's just this concept, and it's almost like a concept that you think everyone around you knows what they're doing. They've got it figured out and they've got the solve to the problem. And even when you go up and you're talking to them about something, it can be intimidating. And I think what I've learned over the last couple of years, especially betting on myself and starting a business, is just because someone has a title or just because someone's been doing this for a long time doesn't mean that they have all the answers. And I think that realization has been something that has kept me going and helped me figure out this concept of imposter syndrome. To double answer your question, right? Think about what we were doing with PreSales Collective, putting ourselves out there and putting content out there. Like, who the F am I to be telling anybody what to be doing? Who am I? So I think for me, just realizing that doesn't always mean title, doesn't always mean experience. Anybody can have an answer to a problem.
Yeah, it's so funny when you were talking about that, how we're all friends with Jeff Margulies at ServiceNow, and actually was connected through you, through PreSales Collective, back when Noah was a newborn. It's 5 years ago. It's crazy. PreSales Collective brought us all together. One of the things that he always says is you need your at bat. And a couple years ago, I was like, what does that even mean? It really means just doing something over and over. And it's almost like training your brain that, okay, this isn't as scary. Okay, it doesn't matter what title they have. Okay, nothing bad happened. Let me keep going. Oh, I learned something. Just reframing your mind. Has that been, I'm sure you talk to all levels all the time, starting a new company. Did you fall back on what you had learned at PreSales Collective, or was it like a whole new mindset that you had to go into with TestBox?
I would say it's a great comment and a great call. It happened even before, right? I think the realization that I had was like, even at Showpad, I was one of the first employees in the US, was the first SC, built the team, and we ended up hiring very senior folks from very accomplished organizations that were really successful and really smart. And there's at times in those meetings where I knew that I had the answer and I knew that I was right. And I was either afraid to speak up or I was told I was wrong and I just cowered down. And that experience, I think through like my tech experience allowed me when I got to really Salesforce, especially was like, wow, all these people have been at Salesforce. I know a lot of these answers, right? Oh, I actually have a very different perspective on how we should problem solve and realized, wow, just because someone's been around for a long time doesn't mean that they're the expert on this. And when I actually had senior people asking me for my opinions, I was like, oh, people value my opinion here. And I think with PreSales Collective, I learned to take a risk and put myself out there and learn that like some people aren't going to agree. And a lot of people might not like what I have to say, but if I believe in it and I've got factual information and data to back my point of view up, there's probably some things that are right about it. And I should just, if I'm vindicated about it and feel that validation, I should move forward on it. And so I think that taught me a lot. And I think at PreSales Collective, we bring up Jeff. Jeff's been an awesome mentor to me throughout the years, but just being in a room with someone like Jeff and having a conversation and voicing my opinion and having disagreement and agreement with each other, that gave me the confidence to walk into any room to be like, oh, I've got an opinion. And like people at big companies actually respect it who've been successful in their careers. So I think it's been all part of this journey, right? It's always layering on. Everything's always layering on. It is the at-bats that has kind of prepared me to where I'm at. And I would say PreSales Collective taught me a lot of thick skin. I learned there's a lot of negative things that happened over years that a lot of people don't know about. But I've learned that if I really care about something and I'm very passionate and I think that it's rooted in fact, then I should run with it and go with it. And not everyone's going to love it, but it's what I believe in.
I love it so much. And everything that you're talking about in your journey just really, it shows leadership from my perspective, like being passionate about a vision, knowing that driving change is really hard. Not everybody's going to agree with you because people just naturally are resistant to change. And then sometimes people are jealous. And I feel you told me and Allison about that when we were kicking off our idea. And I really loved that anecdote that you gave us.
Yeah.
Now, maybe just because I think people really resonate with specific examples.
Yeah.
It could be from your time at Showpad, Salesforce, or more recently in your new role. Can you tell us about a specific time that you felt like imposter and how did you respond to it?
Yeah. I was thinking about this going into this meeting and going into this interview. And I think I have so many different examples that I can give, but I want to layer in one main one and layer in a second one is that with PreSales Collective, our first executive summit that we hosted, where it was a 2 or 3 day event and we had hundreds of leaders signing in to come and attend that virtual event to learn about how to do their job and do their job better. And all those things that I've already mentioned so far, I have to admit that was the scariest thing of like when we were kicking off that event of holy shit, if I get this wrong, is this going to kill my credibility? Is going to kill my business's credibility? What's it going to mean for me? What's it going to mean for my future after? And those things were really tough. If I think about that whole event, it was probably a moment that I ended up getting through and it had a positive impact. But who am I? Again, I've already made this comment. Who am I to tell these people what to do? And that's why I was always like, how do I get experts to tell people what they're doing in that type of moment? But that was like a really tough event for me. I think for me, it was like rehearsing and understanding like, what is the worst case scenario here? And what is the best case scenario here? Like always, like I'm a very risk on solutions leader. I always have been. And I think that has been a superpower for me. But understanding and assessing risk in the situation. And what if the worst thing that happened is that some people didn't agree with what I had to say? Okay. But the best thing is that they could have really believed in what we had to say and how we were doing things and what we were doing, which ended up ultimately being what happened with PSC. And it grew tremendously. And I would say there's another part of that I will always remember is DocuSign actually brought me into their solutions event virtually. And I talked about imposter syndrome about like and I was like, who am I to sit here and talk about imposter syndrome to all of you, right? About the situation. And I think it's those moments, right, where you just have to assess the risks. You have to understand the worst case scenario, the best case scenario, rehearse the situation and try to be grounded in reality, right? Because I think a lot of times we're just in our head and we're just getting ahead of ourselves. We just need to take a step back, assess the situation as objective as possible. And so I think again, I had a lot of that at PSC, but that first big virtual event, I felt like so make or break for me and for the company.
That's a good one. You would never have known that you were feeling like an imposter at that event.
I always believe you got to practice and you got to come off as confident and like believe in what you're saying. And I think as long as you lead with that, then the rest will work itself.
Yeah. Hannah's always really good at whenever we do our workshops, the Fight Your Imposter workshop, practicing, running through it all the way, start to finish,
Totally.
fixing and tweaking. And it's always just so helpful. So you were talking about thick skin. I think I've gotten my thick skin from Hannah.
Yeah. Love
Oh
that.
my gosh, what a high compliment.
I love
I
that.
feel like completely different from when we started back with PSC, last March in 2023 to who we are now as people, as presenters, as
Yeah.
podcast hosts, as all of it. And it's just like this full circle moment that I'm having right now.
Yeah.
Ooh,
It's
I
awesome.
like it.
I think that's the best part about this whole thing is like life is a journey, right? And as long as you're learning and you're growing and you're learning from your experiencing and putting those things into practice, it just makes you better and better and better at what you do. And I think that's why I've known the two of you for a long time now. And I've always enjoyed how you work together and how you feed off each other because you need that, right? Like I think about Yuji and I, like PSC would have never been what it was without Yuji and I both working together to have that complementary skill set, right? Because if I was very risk on, maybe Yuji was more risk off, but we found that the answer was always in the middle. And I have found the best partnerships tend to be people who bring out the best of you and bring out different parts of you that you wouldn't have been able to maybe showcase on your own.
I think Allison and I always talk about how different the two of us are. And so I completely can relate to that. So I think maybe just to round us out, we have an audience. A lot of our audience is shared, I think, with our PreSales Collective, and we have so many common connections. What is the one thing that you think you would tell this audience in closing? What's the one thing they should take away about imposter syndrome for feeling it right now?
Yeah. I think the practical advice that I could offer is talk about it. I think a lot of things that we tend to work up internally and in our head tends to be rationalized when we talk about it out loud. My wife and I go through the same thing as I got this thing in my head and I say it out loud and she's like, you already have your answer. You already know. Right. And so I think sometimes it's hard. It's Allison, as you mentioned at the start of this call, being vulnerable, having that vulnerable moment. I have learned that if you embrace a vulnerability as a leader, it comes back to you in so many different ways. So I think that's my advice for folks is don't be afraid to talk about things. It's totally okay. Find people that you can talk to about these things that will give you unfiltered and raw advice because most of the time you find you're probably in your own head about the situation and everything's all good.
Awesome.
Love
Thank
it.
you. Yes. Thank you so much. This was so fun. Hannah, I love that you started us off saying like how much we're looking forward to this. It like hit me midway through how great this is. So I'm really proud of all of us. You know what? We've been on a journey together.
Hold on. Let's just talk about this. So when we all met and started talking to each other, I was a senior sales engineer at a startup company. Allison, you were senior sales engineer at another company, right?
Yeah.
James, you were senior manager at Salesforce, so you were maybe a little ahead of us. But I think about like where we are now. Like you're a chief solutions officer. I'm a senior manager.
Yeah.
Allison, like senior leadership, like just crazy. I'm like, my mind is
amazing.
Right? But I think all the things, all the conversations we've had have really impacted me personally and helped me take those risks to get from that. So anyway, I really enjoyed this.
I'm very proud of the two of you, right? I know we talk. I tell people I FaceTime my wife, my daughter, and the two of you. Not the only people I FaceTime, right? But it's so good. And I'm so proud of the two of you and all that you're doing and all the work that you're doing. I know it's hard and people don't understand how much hard work it is. And you've got professional careers, you've got families, and you've got these projects. So keep up the good work, keep moving forward. And thank you for having me. And thanks for the patience and waiting to get me on here.
I was worth it. Thanks, James.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So worth it. So worth it. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Imposter Talks. Subscribe and review our podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And please follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube at 4under3. And we want to hear your imposter story. If you're interested in being a guest, please email us at info@4under3.io. Thanks so much.